Yes, and I'll be speaking today regarding the open surgical treatment of abdominal aortoiliac aneurysms. Uh, First, AAA repair was described by Dubost et al. In 1952. Elective open repairs have excellent outcome of around 1 to 7% mortality rates depending upon the center volume and surgeon experience. Recent meta-analysis of RCTs of EVAR demonstrated a 3.3% 30-day mortality among the combined 1,342 patients repaired by the open technique. The open it is reported for highest volume centers in the administrative database using the NIS. EVAR has been a game changer since its introduction in the first time in 1990s. There have been a reduction in open AAA repairs over time. EVAR has shown better short and medium term outcomes over open repair. And EVAR is a preferred mode of therapy in majority of the patients. Yet, open AAA repair remains the cornerstone of vascular surgery. The indications for open repair, it is mainly reserved for patients who cannot undergo EVAR and certain other indications which we'll be discussing. The anatomical constraint which indicates for open repair are no aortic or a hostile aortic neck is the main indication. Proximal aortic necks that are short, angled or trapezoidal. A heavy thrombus burden in the sac. A heavily calcified aorta which compromises the EVAR device. Iliac artery occlusion disease, especially CTO, is a important indication for open repair. Common and external iliac artery aneurysms. Open repair is better when patency of the internal iliac artery has to. In cases where patients are claudicant, there is a risk of colonic, pelvic, or spinal cord ischemia. But none of these are absolute indications for open repair, as newer devices such as branched endographs for iliac arteries have been developed, which are useful in these such circumstances. EVAR conversion to a open case is done in cases of failure of previous endograft due to migration or a recalcitrant endoleak that is unable to be resolved via endovascular means. But due to a presence of the endograft, there is inflammation and fibrosis, which makes the operative time, hospital stay, and mortality higher in comparison to de novo AAA repair, open repair. Endograft does not have to be removed completely, except in cases of infected endografts. Infection of the native aorta or the previous open or endovascular repair, open AAA repair represents the definitive treatment plan. Infected prior aortic graft. In such cases, excision of all prosthetic material has to be done, and the extra anatomic reconstruction remains the gold standard. Recent data suggests that the use of aortic homograph or rifampin soaked Dacron may be equally efficacious. Under certain special circumstances, open AAA repair is preferred, such as horseshoe kidney with multiple renal and isthmus arteries originating from the aorta and the iliac arteries. Patients whom patency of the IMA needs to be maintained, such as bilateral hypogastric artery occlusion, SMA stenosis or occlusion, previous colectomy, open repair. For open AAA repair, a good preoperative is essential. Patient should be evaluated for significant weight loss. Nutritional parameters such as hypoproteinemia and all should be worked up to, which are very essential to predict the rates of perioperative complications. History of liver disease and cirrhosis have to be taken into account. History of cerebrovascular accidents or Parkinson's disease have to be taken into account. Or a compromised baseline function status must be determined so that the current and anticipated postoperative quality of life are sufficient to merit proceeding with a elective operation. If a patient cannot withstand such a major operation, we will be condemning a patient to a post-surgery life care by to be given by caregivers. Operative imaging is one of the most important steps which has to be done, and CT angiography is preferred modality, where we can look where the size and extent of the aneurysm is calculated, the aneurysm angulation, arterial tortuosity, arterial wall calcification and intravascular thrombus is looked for. This is a three-dimensional CT reconstructed image showing an abdominal aortic aneurysm which torches proximal aorta and torches bilateral iliac artery aneurysm. A detailed view of the proximal aorta shows involvement of the visceral aorta, which can be accurately determined on CT angiographs. Concomitant diseases of the visceral vessel and aortoiliac segments can also be apparent on CT angio. Decision regarding the need for endarterectomy or a complex reconstruction can be made preoperatively. Information regarding the visceral and venous anatomy might alter the operative plan, such as the presence of a retroaortic or a circumferential renal vein. Multiple renal arteries or horseshoe kidney can affect both clamp site selection and arterial reconstruction. Concomitant stenotic occlusive or aneurysal disease, the site of the distal reconstruction, as well as the need for additional procedures. Incidental findings such as malignancy detected on CTA takes precedence over the triple repair. MR angiography is equivalent in terms of determination of the size and extent and the presence of any occlusive disease, and may offer more information regarding inflammation in cases of inflammatory aneurysm. But it, however, does not give any valuable information regarding the calcification, and in many cases may overestimate the degree of stenotic disease. In operative techniques, the two main operative techniques being the transperitoneal and retroperitoneal approach. Other techniques which are being done in many centers across the world are mini laparotomy, laparoscopic, or robotic approaches. The selection of the approach depends on the surgeon preference and familiarity. The transperitoneal approach provides rapid access to the infrarenal aorta with little need for complex patient positioning. It's ideal for use in emergency and also for surgeons who are not familiar with retroperitoneal approach. In comparison to retroperitoneal approach, the transperitoneal approach gives better access to the right renal artery, right internal and external iliacs, as well as the femoral arteries. It is more difficult to expose the visceral aortic segment from this approach. Retroperitoneal approach usually is accessed via the left intercostal space, which allows for superior exposure of the visceral and supraceliac aorta as well as the left renal artery. It is useful in pararenal aortic and type 4 thoracoabdominal aortic aneurysm. It is better in patients who have already done abdominal operations, which avoids the risk of redo laparotomy. It is advantageous in obese patients as the intestinal contents and other viscera due to aid of gravity of pushed away from the operative field. Exposure of the right internal and external iliac artery can be more difficult via this approach though. Depending on the retroperitoneal repair has been associated with significantly lesser postoperative fluid requirement, pulmonary edema, pneumonia, respiratory failure, postoperative ileus, shorter length of intensive care unit stay and overall hospital and lesser cost as well. But some other studies have disputed the equivalent results between transperitoneal and retroperitoneal approach. In the transperitoneal approach, to expose the aorta, the ligament of Treats is divided. The third and fourth portion of the duodenum are reflected to the right, and the periaortic, lymphatic, and connective tissues are ligated and divided. Care should be taken to of the inferior mesenteric vein. However, if it facilitates the exposure, it can be ligated. Incision in the posterior putamen is then continued caudally in this plane to expose the entire infrarenal aorta, although starting to the left of the aorta, the incision has to progress progressively towards the right and towards the aortic midline so as to prevent injury of the IMA, sigmoid mesentery, and the nerve plexuses at the bifurcation of the aorta. Where tube grafts are to be used, the distal anastomosis will be to the aorta itself, and the dissection does not have to proceed beyond what is necessary to obtain distal control at the level of proximal common iliac arteries. The pararenal aorta, cases of short or no infrarenal neck, the pararenal aorta has to be exposed. Juxtarenal aneurysm, the placement of the suprarenal clamp, which necessitates additional exposure of proximal aorta. The posterior putamen is open proximal to the level of the renal vein. The renal vein mobilization can be decided depending on the position of the renal vein, whether anterior or posterior, which can be ascertained on the pre-op CT. If it is anterior, as it is in the majority of the cases, it is mobilized to gain proximal aortic exposure achieved by dividing the adrenal and the lumbar branches of the renal vein. Alternatively, it can be divided safely, but with the added risk of increased post renal efficiency, but the mentioned magnitude of gonadal adrenal lumbar has to be preserved. Decision to divide the left renal vein should be done early before aggressively being mobilized, because once divided, the other veins have to be preserved. In case of retroaortic or circumferential left renal vein, caution must be followed during the placement of proximal clamp, as the tips of the clamp may injure this vein. In the supraceliac aorta exposure, it is exposed by dividing the lesser omentum of the gastrohepatic ligament. The aorta is identified by palpation, and the overlying fibers of the right crux of the diaphragm are divided. The left lobe of the liver is mobilized by dividing the left triangular and coronary ligaments, and if the falciparum ligament if required. And the esophagus is protected by placing a NG tube will help in identifying the esophagus, and it has retracted to the left. Aorta is dissected anteriorly down to the level of the celiac axis, and injury to the pancreas has to be avoided. Medial visceral rotation is also a good maneuver to expose a suprarenal aorta by the transperitoneal approach, especially in the suprarenal aneurysms. It is best approach. However, the suprarenal supraceliac clamping is best approached by the retroperitoneal approach. The left colon is mobilized by incising the posterior perineum just lateral to the line of Tolt. Incision is carried cephalad through the phrenicocholic ligament and then medially towards the aortic aortus along the underside of the diaphragm. Then there are two options regarding to the mobilization of the left kidney. Further, first is to mobilize the left kidney, or second is to leave it in the renal fossa. In the first option, a plane should be developed posterior to the Gerota's fascia and the posterior abdominal, allowing the colon, pancreas, spleen, and the left kidney to be reflected medially. Care has to be taken to ligate the left renal lumbar veins when mobilizing the left kidney so as to avoid its convulsion. In the second option, when the left kidney is left in the renal fossa, if it's left in the renal fossa, the lenorenal and the lenophrenic ligament have to be divided, and a plane is developed between the anterior surface of the Gerota's fascia and the posterior surface of the colonic mesentery in the pancreas. When it comes to the arterial reconstruction, after adequate exposure of the aorta, the vessels are the proximal and distal clamp sites. After the proximal distal sites are identified, encircling of the vessels is not necessary. It increases the risk of injury to the posterior structures, especially the iliac veins in the distal clamp site. Only enough exposure is required to apply the clamps. Patient is systematically heparinized. Aorta and iliac arteries are clamped. Note should be made that distal clamps are applied first so as to prevent any thrombus from embolizing distally during application of proximal clamp. Lateral aortotomy is done and a T-shaped incision is developed as shown in the image, and aneurysm opened at the proximal and distal ends, so for the graft anastomosis. The proximal anastomotic site is cleared of the thrombus and calcium, and end-to-end anastomosis is performed using a running polypropylene suture. Use of a aortic retention suture of a self-retaining retractor help in adequate exposure needed for the anastomosis. Back bleeding lumbar vessels are controlled, and distal reconstruction is done in similar fashion, allowing adequate forward flushing of the graft done before completion of the anastomosis. Regarding the closure, aneurysm sac is closed over the graft, and after ensuring adequate hemostasis, it is done by running. Posterior peritoneum is closed in a similar fashion. Both preventing the contact between the bowel and the graft. So bowel and the graft, it is critical. This step is critical so that to prevent any future iatroenteric fistula to develop. If the retroperitoneum cannot be closed, the omentum has to be brought down so as to cover the defect. After this the bowel is returned to its normal position and the incision is closed in layers. While in the retroperitoneal approach, the patient is placed in right lateral decubitus position. There is a break in the table iliac crest so as to open up the incision. The incision starts at the 10th intercostal space, starting in the posterior axillary line, which can vary depending upon the proximal extent of the aneurysm. Incision is carried onto the abdomen and runs parallel to the lateral border of the left rectus and terminates below the umbilicus or at the level determined by the distal extent of the planned arterial reconstruction. Incision is developed and care has to be taken not to be violate the peritoneum. Peritoneum is blindly freed from the abdominal wall and diaphragm using a careful blunt digital dissection. Peritoneal and retroperitoneal contents are stripped anteromedially. The left psoas is identified and exposes the entire intra-abdominal aorta. Left ureter has to be protected because it runs anterior to the aorta and the left common iliac artery. By staying in a plane anterior to the iliac arteries, right ureter can also be identified. Using adequate exposure can be achieved. If the posterior left renal vein is identified, it is advisable not to mobilize the left kidney and leave it in the retroperitoneum, but it can be divided as long as the gonadal vein is preserved. In case of the supraceliac aorta via the retroperitoneum, it provides better access to the visceral segment of the aorta and the supraceliac clamping sites. And it is the preferred exposure method. And the blunt dissection of the anterior and posterior surface of the aorta has to be done so as to prevent any inadvertent injury to surrounding structure. And care must be taken to avoid avulsing any lumbar arteries or vein that runs posteriorly. In the arterial reconstruction, retroperitoneal incision is ideal for suprarenal type 4 thoracoabdominal aortic aneurysms. After apenization, the supraceliac cross clamping is done. The aneurysm is opened with the longitudinal aortotomy. It is transitioned into a T-shaped incision. It is important to identify the left renal artery and to have divided the divided the renal lumbar veins to avoid injury to this by this maneuver. The renal artery is freed from the aortic wall with small cuff surrounding the aorta and retracted out of the immediate field. The celiac artery, SMA, and right renal artery are identified after opening the sac. Significant stenosis detected preoperatively or on table can be treated by endarterectomy or a balloon-mounted stent if deployed through the open aorta. The proximal anastomosis of the graft is done after beveling the edge so as to incorporate the celiac, SMA, and the right renal artery. And the anastomosis is done using a running polypropylene suture. And if the posterior wall is friable, a pledgeted suture is, if not, non-pledgeted suture is enough. The proximal graft is clamped and the supraceliac clamp is removed to allow perfusion of the viscera and the right kidney. Subsequently, the kidney has to be revascularized by a bypass with a arm from the graft. If the bypass is performed, a hybrid stent graft can be fashioned as a side arm from the main graft before the main graft can be fashioned from the side arm from the main graft before the aortic cross clamping is ordered to reduce the renal ischemia time and help in anastomosis. Aortic cross clamp is progressively shifted distally after the left renal artery anastomosis is complete and both the renal arteries are perfused. Then oversew the back bleeding lumbar arteries after evacuation of the thrombus. This step is important. The thrombus has not to be evacuated until we reach this step so as to save the time which would have been spent in controlling these bleeders. And the reconstruction is continued in the usual manner. As the peritoneum is not violated in the retroperitoneal approach, the sac need not be closed. However, if there is any rents in the peritoneum, has to be closed by running absorbable sutures. Injury to the colon has to be avoided during the closure of the skin incision. And table break has to be reduced to make it reduce the tension on the skin incision, and the incision has to be closed in layers. And special note to be done for the external oblique. Interrupted sutures are preferred in external oblique closure as it provides more strength. Certain considerations have to be kept in mind during the AAA repair, uh, especially when managing the inferior miss of which has to be assessed on preoperative CT angiogram. If it is thrombosed on preoperative CT angiogram, no further intervention is necessary. But IMA has to be preserved in cases of significant SMA disease, bilateral hypogastric artery occlusion, large IMA, or prior colectomies. IMA can be preserved by either reimplantation of the IMA into the graft using a small cuff of the surrounding aorta, or end-to-end fashion from a sidearm attached to the body of the graft. Renal abnormalities have to be taken into consideration, such as horseshoe kidney, pancake kidney, and cross-fused renal ectopic kidneys. And renal perfusions can help very useful in determining the functionality of the kidney and contribution of not only each kidney, but each portion of the respective kidneys can be assessed. Venous abnormalities such as renal vein and IVC abnormalities should be looked for in preoperative CT scans, and renal vein abnormalities are around 1% and IVC abnormalities are 10%. The abnormalities being retroaortic left renal vein, circumaortic left renal vein, left-sided IVC or a duplicated IVC, accessory left renal veins, and preaortic confluence of the iliac veins have to be looked for. Intraoperatively, management of clamping is of paramount importance. Effort must be directed at maintaining adequate blood pressure while avoiding excessive hypertension. Optimize preload and afterload to minimize the effects of cross clamping on myocardial oxygen. The mean arterial pressure must also be reduced before application of the cross clamp, and anticipate the ultimate need to remove the aortic cross clamp and the ensuing hypotension. There has to be a clear and direct communication between the surgical and the anesthesiology team before at the time of application of the clamp and before removal of the clamp, so that physiology can be managed appropriately. A dedicated anesthesia team for these procedures has shown to provide the best outcomes. The renal protection to be attempted during this procedure. Certain drugs like furosemide, mannitol, dopamine, N-acetylcysteine have been studied for renal protection, but the benefits have not been borne out of clinical experience, and these agents are not without the risk and adverse effects. Phenoldopam, which is a selective dopamine receptor agonist, was thought to hold promise, but a meta-analysis in in cardiac surgery showed that it reduces AK rates, but had no effect on the need of renal replacement therapy. The renal perfusion with cold hyperosmolar crystalloids, histidine, ketoglutarate, HTK solution, or saline with mannitol and prednisone can be used, has been reported by many groups to improve the renal outcome following juxtarenal aneurysm repairs. But it is a cumbersome process which takes time to set up the perfusion circuit, which overall increases the ischemia time, and whereas other groups have focused on reducing the aortic cross clamping time, and it has shown excellent outcomes. Ultimately, reducing the ischemia times to the kidney likely has the greatest beneficial effects on the renal protection. Maneuvers such as beveling the proximal anastomosis to include the right renal artery, quickly reimplanting the left renal artery are useful in this regard. Post-op complication, early complications are the most important ones to be looked after. According to the Lifeline registry data, open repair in non-ruptured infrarenal tripere, in the open arm of the randomized device trials demonstrated a 71% overall early complication, with 26% being serious and 11 major adverse events. The NSQIP and the vascular study of New England suggests that as the procedure complexity increases, the rate of the overall complication also increases. The perioperative care has a direct effect on the incidence and outcome of these potentially devastating occurrences, and advances in the intraoperative and postoperative care as seen has been credited with improving aneurysm outcomes overall. Myocardial ischemia is an important eventuality which has to be taken into account. The aortic cross-clamping results in significant hemodynamic perturbation, which creates increased demand on the heart. Appropriate preoperative imaging and preoperative imaging will help in predicting the perioperative myocardial events and can be reduced. Perioperative myocardial infarction still occurs despite this and around 10% of the patients. Perioperative beta blockade in major non-cardiac surgeries has been shown to reduce cardiovascular events and in-hospital mortality in both extremely large retrospective population study as well as prospective RCTs. Smaller observation trial focused on patients with AAA repair similarly showed that administration of this beta blockers was associated with significant reductions in hospital mortality. In respiratory failure, extubation upon completion of the procedure depends upon the complexity of the repair which was undertaken. For more complex repairs, it is advisable surgery. Patients will often require long duration, around 26 to 36 hours of fluid resuscitation because of the hemodynamic variables and associated with the proximal clamping. Once this is over and the patient has demonstrated enough stability and there is no evidence of ongoing bleed, patient can be extubated. Despite that, there is high rates of postoperative pneumonia occurring in almost up to 17% of the patients. Postoperative pulmonary complication of any form have been associated with reduced long-term survival. Renal complication is also an important, one of the important things to be looked after for. In Medicare population, almost 10% of the population, there was a post-op renal efficiency, but only 0.4% required renal replacement therapy. Meta-analysis for patients undergoing open elective renal aortic aneurysm repair demonstrated efficiency of 15 to 20%, but only 3.5% eventually required dialysis. The liberal use of intravenous fluids and colloids throughout the perioperative period are key in preventing the recurrent episodes of renal ischemia and reversing the effects of the aortic cross-clamping. Colonic ischemia is another complication which has to be looked after, though lesser in degree. It around occurs in up to 0.2 to 6% of open AAA repairs. It is usually caused by ligation of the IMA, failure to revascularize domestic arteries, or pre-existing iliofemoral occlusive disease, SMS stenosis, atherothromboembolism, injury due to a retractor or a previous colonic resection. The rate of subclinical disease is much higher than the clinically manifested one. Endoscopically evident disease is seen up to 13% of the patient, and histologically evident disease is seen up to 30% of the patients. Bloody bowel movements are the most primary presenting symptoms in these patients. It is associated with around 25 to 55% mortality. Can it reach up to 90% if bowel resection is required in cases of infarction? These patients have to be aggressively resuscitated, and broad spectrum antibiotics have to be started targeting the intestinal flora. If the disease is limited to the mucosa and muscularis mucosae, evidence of systemic derangement, patient can be managed conservatively. But if a full thickness ischemia is present and emergency laparotomy has to be done. If there is doubt, laparotomy has to be done regardless. Negative laparotomy is better than no laparotomy and the patient ending up in a rupture, colonic rupture. Lower extremity ischemia is another complication which has to be taken care of. Distal perfusion should be always checked before the patient has emerged from the anesthesia and before leaving the operative room. You have to check for the extremity pulses and any other clinical evidence of limb ischemia. It's suggestive technical anastomotic complications, clamp injury, acute thrombosis, or acute embolic disease. To prevent the thrombotic complications, adequate systemic anticoagulation must be maintained, which can be checked real time via the activated clotting time in the OT, and heparin should be redosed accordingly. Spinal cord ischemia is an extremely rare event occurs, which can occur after the open AAA repair. But rates are most highest in the type 4, extent 4 thoracoabdominal aneurysm. Patients who have undergone previous thoracic aortic procedures or aortic cross clamp location and time is an important indicator for ischemia. Patency of the internal iliac arteries and profound intraoperative and postoperative hypotension are all likely to play a role. Venous thrombosis are of lesser incidence in AAA repairs because of the systemic anticoagulation. However, in routine duplex surveillance in postoperatively, up to 8% of the patients can develop DVT despite of mechanical and chemical prophylaxis. The latest SVS recommend intermittent pneumatic compression, early ambulation to all patients undergoing AAA repair, and of chemoprophylaxis is done in high-risk patients such as prior venous thromboembolism, BMI greater than 25, patients who have limited mobility or a history of malignancy or a hypercoagulable state. The outcomes of AAA repair historically have been around 5 to 8% mortality rate. The early mortality in large database, multi-institutional and population-based registries show mortality rate approaching around 3%. Similar results of overall are obtained in the open arm of the EVARs, approaching around 3.3%. Contemporary abdominal for renal and suprarenal abdominal aortic aneurysm repairs. Depending upon the clamp sites, the mortality rates are as given in the table below, ranging anywhere between 3 to 6.1% and in supraceliac clamp site ranging up to 13.4%, which has been the highest, and lowest being around 1.8%. Patients after surgery have to be kept in the post-op surveillance, have to be closely watched after until they are free from procedure-related complications. The aorta has to be imaged at least via duplex ultrasound so as to ensure there is no progressive aortic dilatations. Once this has been confirmed, the SVS guidelines recommends imaging every 5 years or earlier if there is any clinical concerns regarding growth of aneurysm or any other complication. Special circumstances where open AAA repair are used is after open conversion after EVAR. The most common indication being endoleak with growth in size of the aneurysm. In such situation, the repair is much more complex. Supraceliac clamping is preferred as because the suprarenal fixation of the endograft, the infrarenal clamping cannot be done. Then the dissection is usually difficult due to the fibrosis and dense fibrosis and inflammation which is induced by the endograft. Graft needs removal if the is the etiology for the open repair, whereas in other cases where the infection is not the etiology, all of the endograft need not be removed, left parts of it can be left behind. It is important to recognize that the lumbar branches and the IMI were never surgically occluded at the time of the endovascular repair, and these may need to be overserved. The reported mortality rates of for late conversion among contemporary series range from 0 to 25%. The EVAR conversion is associated with the longer operative duration and increased mortality. Recent meta-analysis review of literature suggests that the overall mortality among 593 elective conversion across more than 26 centers was nearing 3.2%, which is a good mortality rate. Another important variant of AAA which has to be taken account is inflammatory aneurysm. It accounts to all 5% of all the aortic aneurysm. It may be an exaggerated variation of the normal inflammatory response or a chronic subacute rupture and a variant of the retroperitoneal fibrosis which leads to a characteristic inflammatory rind. Stent grafting has been shown to promote resolution of the periorgasmal inflammatory response similar to that of open repair, suggesting that the aneurysm itself was driving the inflammatory process. The inflammatory segment mostly involved, but due to the dense inflammation, supraceliac grafting is preferred. The retroperitoneal approach is a preferred approach to repair inflammatory aneurysm. The entered without attempting to dissect the adjacent structures as they will be densely adherent to it. The ureters are frequently involved in the inflammatory process as well, and to identify as well as to decompress the kidney, prior stenting ureteral stents are preferred. Prednisone has been shown to reduce the retroperitoneal inflammation, but it has been only used to be useful in ongoing inflammation in patients who have been treated surgically for aneurysms. Infected abdominal aneurysms are also rare occurrence which can be encountered. It can be either a primary infection of the abdominal aneurysm or a secondary seeding of AAA, which can occur in cases of bacteremia. The common bacteria isolated are Staphylococcus, Streptococcus, Salmonella, and E. coli. With the recent trend going toward more commonly towards Staphylococcus and Salmonella. The diagnosis is based on clinical and imaging findings. The classical imaging findings include periodic soft tissue mass, standing or fluid, as well as signs of destruction of surrounding tissues such as the kidneys and the vertebral column. The infected aneurysm tend to be more saccular rather than fusiform in morphology. Regarding the management, the patients have to be aggressively managed with antibiotic targeted to the isolated organism. Prompt surgical repair has to be done with the aim of debriding all the infected tissue. Extra anatomic bypass and an extra in situ reconstructive techniques can be are available. Despite this, the mortality rates are much higher compared to regular AAA repair, reaching up to 36% mortality. With this, I end the presentation. Any questions are there?